But Chris, thank you for taking time out of what I guess is a hectic pre-festival schedule. We are here to talk about your film, The Moor, which screens at FrightFest as part of the First Blood strand. How are you feeling about the screening?
I'm feeling all the feelings. I've gotten some positive reactions so far, but it's still early days. So we're a baby as far as the film's concerned. So Fright Fest is kind of going to be that big deciding factor of how people, you get that general audience feel. I think it takes me usually 2 screenings to feel pretty good if both screenings went well. So yeah, I'm cautiously optimistic. And Ian at Fright Fest has been so kind with his words and yourself actually. So it's been really helpful actually in keeping me sane during this build up to Fright Fest.
Yeah, I mean to say I try and catch as many ahead of the festival as I can because I tend to be very busy on the media wall. But Ian was very much the person that was like, the more that's that's the one. So like,
wow.
Out
Nice.
of the what the 60 odd films, the fact that you've got one of the directors of the festival championing your film must give you a little bit of reassurance. They've been doing this for like 20 plus years. He's not going to like give such praise to a film that it doesn't warrant it.
No, that's very. Yeah, I owe that guy a shot of whiskey or something, I think. But I've not paid him anything yet. But nice, that's great news, and I can't wait to actually talk about it with him in person because he's only seen it from the outside point of view. I'd be curious. He wants to know how we went about doing it because originally when we got the story, it was all found footage in the treatment. So it's a bit of a, you've seen it now. It's a bit of a hybrid. So. I'd be wondering what he thinks of those kind of things. Like it's a slow burn horror, it's a genre mix. So even just like say talking about the format of going from found footage to normal narrative, structure and stuff. Like it's also a bit of a genre bender in terms of a bit of a mystery crime, and then it transitions or descends into the horror nightmare that the characters are taking on. So yeah, it'd be interesting just to talk to him about what he he got a kick out of it. I guess I'm curious to. I'm obviously good to read your review, but yeah, I'm curious to see what people think of those things. So yeah, it's
Yeah,
interesting
because
time.
it definitely is. It's like you say, it sort of starts out as almost a true crime format, and then it slowly creeps into more of a supernatural horror, and then there are these like elements of found footage sort of interspersed as well. So yeah, it's not your typical, not that any is necessarily, but it's not your typical horror film.
Yeah, and for good or bad, it's just the way it played out. So I remember we had a couple of scripts, and this wasn't the most complicated one. It was quite emotional and straightforward in its narrative. It was actually just in the process of making it that you started to kind of realize, oh, the first half is kind of leaning more grounded, kind of horror, like tension and dread. And then it turns into almost this kind of supernatural and even cosmic kind of horror and dread. But it was always down to the characters really and the characters' journey. If we just got like a solid cast and we could really rely on those actors to portray something very genuine, then hopefully, whatever your horror tastes are, you'll feel for them. So that was kind of what our aim was in general.
And like the Yorkshire Moors have their own sense of notoriety, given their history and links with various serial killers. Is that kind of what inspired the genesis of the idea?
Weirdly, no. In a strange way, it became stuff that got added on top. So me and the writer grew up in Huddersfield and in the 90s, and we knew there was something about the Moor that our parents did not like, but they didn't really go into detail or want to explain it to us. So it always had this ominous presence. And as kids, you kind of fill in the gaps. So as kids in the school playground and all that kind of stuff, it became the boogeyman. Don't go up there. Do you know what I mean? And then on an off chance, once during the 6-week holidays, they'll take you for a walk on the moors and go, "Isn't this beautiful?" And you're like, "What the hell? Like, you're giving me mixed signals here. Is there ghosts? What are we doing up here? I'm scared. There's sheep staring at me." So it kind of, the genesis of it was that. It was just like, we were in lockdown. He had a treatment that was already based on it. And we're like, well, wouldn't it be nice to set a film in our home county. So we took inspirations, because obviously all that stuff happened in Lancashire, and the peat bodies, the Lindau man, the body was found thousands of years old, still preserved in the peat. That was I think it was in Cheshire. So what we did is we just took the north, and we combined all of moorland history and combined it together, and that became our story. So it wasn't specifically that, it was more everything combined. I just think that probably it's the most engaging element of the script, I think, that people will really latch onto, because it's the reason that the characters are so emotional, because it's so raw. But yeah, it's a whole hodgepodge. It's everything. We just looked at everything about the Moors, like from thousands of years ago to like 60 years ago. So
yeah, and it works, especially, I mean, that people sort of in London, anything beyond the M25 is the north. So there's not necessarily going to be a huge amount of audience that are like, well, actually, this happened here and this actually happened over here. So
that's true. Yeah. Even the US will be like, what's the Moor? You know what I mean? You're like, yeah, fair enough. Yeah, I get you.
Yeah, but I mean, I have a friend who lives close to the Lancashire Moors, and like she won't go anywhere near them because of its history. It is very strange that how even all these years later that there is such a heavy sort of superstition and reticence about those places.
Well, they've been warning kids not to go up there for hundreds of years. It's crazy when you really look into the history. Like, there was sacrifices made upon the Moors to as a peace offering and stuff like that. It's so strange that the Moors has got this long, colorful history. But you're right. Like, I've had people talk to me and go, just driving past the Moors makes them feel uncomfortable. Like, if you're crossing over from the northern talk now, but from like Huddersfield to Manchester across, you just literally go up to on the motorway, go up high, and you're just surrounded by these hills. And depending on what day you get it, it looks like the most creepy place ever, or it looks like a scene from the Teletubbies. So it's its own beast. It's its own beast. And that was actually, weirdly, my main draw to the film was I'm a big fan of Eldritch locations. And, you've got things like the Overlook Hotel in The Shining and stuff like that. And the Moor is pretty primed for being its own evil presence, I think. And I was worried when we were doing the cinematography. It was weird that you were so nice about it, because we're like, oh, like if people don't know, like this could be a field. But when you go up there and the weather changes so consistently, and there's something off about it all the time, that you kind of go, oh no, we should be okay. So yeah, that was interesting.
Yeah, I mean, how was it sort of shooting up there? It says, there's night shoots and things, and it doesn't seem like the most easily accessible place to shoot a film. Like you say, could have just done a field and, fixed it in post.
Yeah, maybe I should have done. No, it was a combination of a few things. We knew that the Moor shooting was going to be the hardest. So what we did is all the night shoots and such were shot on a farm next to a moor. So that's how we did it. We got some really kind farmers to help us, and we kind of got lodging, and then we got facilities, and then we could set up like big massive smoke machines, because there's a lot of mist in the film. So that was consciously like, this isn't going to be possible unless we have a few ways of doing it, because the Moors is quite well taken care of and stuff. They don't want people trudging over the Moors, so we had to be very respectful and work around things. I think we were only actually up on the Moors for a few days, so
definitely works. And we've mentioned the cinematography. I mentioned it in our FrightFest preview piece that it really is beautiful, and you do use these different methods with the camera to tell the story. You've got like a head cam at one point, and then you've got drone photography, sort of like getting all the expanse of the moors. Just wondering if you could talk a little bit about your approach and why you decided to tell the story in that way, because as you said, it started as a found footage, but it could have easily just gone from found footage to straight camera setup. Why did you decide to mix them all together?
Originally, my personal style, like for me to make the film, I feel like I could have done a found footage film. They're hard to do. I'd have to relearn the language and stuff, because it's its own craft and it's beautiful in its own way. But I feel more closer to the way we shot it, even though I'll probably say the best part of the film is the last 9 minutes, and that's completely found footage. Spoiler alert. But actually, just to tell you that the ending is not changed since the treatment at all. Because when I read the treatment, my jaw was on the floor at the end, and I was like, "I'll do it, but you can't change this ending because it makes me nervous." And I think I read somewhere that a famous director said, if it makes you nervous, you should do it because it means it probably hasn't been done that way yet. And so I was like, all right, that has to exist in every version that we go forward. Otherwise, I don't want to do it. And so it was just about getting to that point then. And interspersing the found footage was something we decided to do. And then what was the other question? Sorry, part of the question.
It was sort of like why you decided to shoot in that way, and how you sort of feel that like helps the story in the way.
Yeah, I think it's just mine and my brother's shooting style, our shooting language. Like, we storyboard a lot, we shoot a lot together, and we felt, we didn't want to get too technical about it. We didn't want to be like, we've got a drone shot, so we have to establish that the character has a drone. We don't want to, do you know what I mean? Like, to not be able to show the Moors from a great height, I was always kind of like, well, I don't want to explain that the character's bought a drone. I just want to be able to do these things. And when we feel like we need to go into that found footage mode, then we will. It would have been a lot cheaper to shoot completely found footage. Harder to make in some ways, true, but it would have been cheaper. It just felt more natural to me to be able to tell the story I want to tell it if I didn't fully do it in found footage. But if you said, do you want to do another one? If somebody turned around to me and said, do you want to make a found footage? I'm like, yeah, sure. Probably.
And you opened the story up in the past, 1996 Yorkshire, which, as somebody that grew up in Nottingham, I'd sort of mentioned to you over emails, it really captured that spirit of childhood. Why did you decide to keep that bit in? Because I mean, I personally think it's a really strong opening that sets this tragedy up perfectly. But I guess there would have been a route where you just met Claire and Bill older.
I think it's because I think it kind of sets up a different kind of horror film to what if well, to be honest, you're starting on a coffee shop with a big long conversation, you're probably like, who are these people and why do I care? Yeah. So it's always good we shot the opening last, so we were like, oh, these performances, we're quite happy with the coffee shop and we love the way they've played the characters and stuff. But it didn't really pop until we put that opening on anyways. So when you I always want to tell it from a child perspective at the beginning. And I wanted to give it a sense of immediacy. So you were there when something happened. And these scenes have kind of been done a lot in the past. There's been a lot of films that do these kind of scenes. And I just felt, all right, if we're going to go all in on this, we're Northern, we're Yorkshire, then my brain, because I helped the writer on this particular scene, I was like, corner shops, like we don't really do them anymore. But as a kid, you always passed a corner shop from school. And as you mentioned, you went straight back to it. So maybe it'll be a specific viewing experience for people like us, but like, I'm hoping that horror fans who are veterans who've watched so many different types of horror films, they'll go, oh, this is just like another version of Maine to Stephen King. Like, he always set things in Maine, and I've never been to Maine, but I go, oh, cool, this is a different kind of horror movie told in a different place. And I'm hoping we applied that some of that logic came through, if that makes sense. But I'm from the 90s, so I didn't steal sweets, but I had friends who did, and it feels like I have a friend of a friend of a friend. But you were scared of the shopkeeper if you did something naughty, and they were adults, and you were still a kid, and you were trying to be a grown-up, being by yourself, going shopping by yourself, and you just never came across. It was never believable. You never got away with it. So for something to really badly happen, that's not just a kid issue, like it's not just a child fear, it's a genuine horrible moment. I'm hoping that, like a parent who has children, it sounds bad, but it's a horror film, like going, it's like a parent's worst nightmare, really. So teenagers will be like, I don't get it. But like to a parent, it's horrible. It's the worst.
I think it works sort of twofold, because those of us who did have that experience of being, chucked out in the morning and then you came back at dinner, and you know, you might have a bit of cash or whatever, so you would go down to the corner shop to get your sweets for lunch. That kind of seemed to
Yeah.
be sort of my upbringing. So it sort of, it taps into that nostalgia. But like you say, it is that I'm now a parent, and one, just the idea of letting her loose in a couple of years to just go knocking around the local area doesn't see, it's not something that's done anymore. But it is, you know, having a child go missing, it must just be like the absolute worst thing that can happen to a parent.
Well, yeah, there's a character. Yeah, I agree. Like, there's a character in the film in one of the interviews who's just she's Maggie Breary, and she's the AD's mum, and she's just so Yorkshire that I said I got to put her on camera, and so she's speaking from experience in terms, not necessarily to the story in the film, but like talking about turning around in the shopping market and thinking she was just there for a second and freaking out, and it's like that's every parent's nightmare. Like, you know, they think they're right next to you and then they're not. So there's something that's channeled with all that stuff, but. Yeah, yeah. I'm just curious now. I'm like, what was the thing you got to buy at the shop? Was it Space Raiders? Like, I don't know. Like the little penny sweet. What was the candy necklaces?
Yes. Yeah, they got banned at my school. Complete tangent. They got banned at my school because people were biting them in half and then like flicking the other half at people. And obviously it was hard candy.
Yeah.
So it came keen. Yeah, they got banned. Like we'd go into school and like our snacks and stuff would be investigated. Not like these days for if you've got chocolate or sweets, but if you had that specific candy that was seen as some sort of like third degree weapon, it was.
Yeah, yeah. And then there's like chocolate cigarettes. What the hell? Like chocolate cigarettes. But yeah, I keep forgetting what I was going to say, but like that was it. I was going to say that that scene was really interesting because I was trying to tell the sound designer and stuff like that, like, I want to hear more kids playing because it's unnatural now.
Yeah.
Like I was saying things like playing Kirby and stuff like that. And like, what's Kirby? And it's where two kids would have a ball and just throw it at each other on the street. These things didn't happen. Like they don't happen now. It's a foreign sound, basically, for good or bad. You know what I mean? So that was really interesting. The opening's its own little short film, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it definitely was that way. And then after that, you do take a while to start to thread the horror elements in. Why did you decide on that approach? You know, what was it about this story that you thought, you know, actually, I don't think I need to bring anything. I can sustain this story before we get into any of that.
It was a decision and a discussion between me and the writer, the influences of the films we took from. So, you know, there's things like from Prisoners to Don't Look Now. A lot of 70s horror was big influences. And it was kind of, because you even could say like we go on the Moor quite a few times versus say like the Blair Witch Project that goes up once and then that's done. And we were kind of like, oh, how do we do that a little bit differently? Because they did it so well. And it was like, well, what if it came off and then you had to choose to go back? Yeah. And it's like that's its own problem. So it was just a natural organic process where I think the influences that we took from slowly unraveled it. And we just wanted to make sure that the escalation was right. So we didn't want to go hard too quickly and then take away from, say, the ending, because the ending is quite striking. And we wanted to make sure that always was like the crown jewel that you got for holding out. So yeah, I think it was just an organic choice that kind of, it's probably a bold choice. You know, I know there's science to like get everybody every 7 minutes, but we're hoping that the characters and the mystery was interesting enough to kind of hold your attention for a while longer. And I think it's because it's like you said earlier, we went from like this almost grounded true crime personal character journey to like some kind of almost cosmic level horror. And to jump from A to B so quickly would have probably had people check out, I guess. So probably that was one of the reasons as well. So if you think about where the film starts to where it goes on the final trip, it's quite a big horror move, isn't it?
Yeah. One of the things that I enjoyed when I was watching it, in addition to, you know, the story and the way the film looked, is the sound design. Like the sound design is so good. There's a sequence in a tent, you know, spoilers, but the sound just completely lets rip. Are you excited to get to, you know, screen it in a cinema environment? Because I'm very sort of keen to sort of at least try and pop in during that particular scene to see how it sounds in that room.
I think I'll be talking to you during that scene, probably. at the wall. So yes, that's where you kind of go. What's if we're going to like volume 6 to 10? Which how high do you want to go on the tent sequence? It's like you have 11. Let's just do it. Like let's go for it. But actually, and I don't know if you got it from the way you watched it, I would definitely suggest popping in. We call the scene. I'm terrible with spoilers. There's one particular scene with a pendulum and some maps, and there's a process that's supernatural that they're utilizing, and it's when we really kicked in the 5.1 sound. And in a cinema, I think people are going to be quite happy with it. It's going to be you're going to be checking your shoulder. You're going to be like, "What was that?" That particular scene, I'm very excited for people to see at FrightFest on the big screen. But the tent scene, yeah, for sure. I'm totally. It's weird because another thing you mentioned of sound design is the found footage was really fun to almost strip it all back too, because it's that claustrophobia of like I can only hear like what's in front of me. Yeah, it's strange, isn't it? I wanted it to feel a little claustrophobic, so I wonder if that'll kick into gear another level of the cinema too.
Yeah, I definitely think that helps you get into Claire's head mindset, because not only are you seeing what she is seeing, but you hear her labored breath, and there's not necessarily anything creepy happening. She's literally just walking through the moors at some point, but the exertion in her breath kind of makes you feel a little bit more panicky than you perhaps should for somebody that's just having a walk.
Somebody just needs to be more cardio. Yeah.
I definitely related to that aspect of her, that would very much be me walking on the moor.
Oh man, it's tough. It literally, we said this as well. Why we have Liz as a character is because if you look across at the moor, you think it's just a flat field. You walk across it, you'll be exhausted. The terrain is so treacherous and deceiving that it'll take you twice as long to walk a moor distance as it would just a normal field. It's ridiculous.
And I guess sort of my final question, this will be going out as pass holders, tickets are going on sale. Why should they take a chance with the Moor and add it to their roster? What are you hoping that they take from this film?
I think it's going to be, I think it's going to be a different type of horror film to what you think it's going to be. I think if you look at the poster and you look at the trailer and the synopsis, I still think you're still going to be surprised by what it is, because it is a bit of a genre bender. And it starts in one place and goes to another, but it all makes sense when you watch it. So because you're following the characters on a journey, you go with them, and I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. And if anything, just the ending. Love these characters and get to that ending, guys. And you're gonna enjoy that ending. I think. Setting myself up there, aren't I? But
it's fine. I will back you up on that. It's great. So I wish you the best of luck with the screening.
Thank you very much.